Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I have a dear friend with me, Katharina Key, and we met and really connected deeply at this beautiful luxury weekend retreat. And I fell in love with her. I love her as a person. She's so enjoyable to be around. I feel like my feminine essence really just radiates. And I just felt such a connection with her because she's a priestess too. And she's really living 3D life. And I talked to her the most that whole weekend. And when I was feeling into who I wanted on the show, I'm like, oh, she's perfect. She's into feminine master codes. She embodies her queendom. She's really living her message. And I thought it would be great to have a conversation today about overflowing queen codes. So I'm so excited you're here, Katharina. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Nikki. I feel honored to be here with you.
Yes. So let's start in the now. Let's take a moment to define overflowing queen code. So let's just start with overflowing, right? So you can go first and then I'll share mine and we'll kind of have a beautiful conversation.
Yes. It fits so perfectly. And by the way, the love is mutual. I also felt like I connected with you the most. And it was just like all the juices were flowing, our wombs were synchronizing. It was like a deep remembering, right? So when it comes to overflow, I think it's quite important to first define, and every woman has to make that definition for herself. What does overflow mean to you? And for me personally, since freedom is or was my highest value, it was the overflow of time, energy, money, right? Which is part of this 3D world. And then with that, of course, an overflow of love, overflow of truth. So these were like my three main drivers that were the North Star that always kept me on that golden thread towards queendom.
Absolutely.
And overflow, to like stay with the definition, for me, it is something that really comes from within, like a fountain, like a well. So that would mean not really sourcing from the outside, whether that's validation or recognition, right? But it's really sourcing all of that from within. So for me, that path was sourcing my own inner freedom, my love, my authentic love, and my truth.
Beautiful. Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I would also add, for me, overflow was really always about so much ease and grace. Like where there was no forcing or trying to make things happen, that just like a fountain, my words, my mission, my message, my work just came forth easily, effortlessly, overflowing, where it was not something I had to put so much effort into.
Yes.
And really, overflow to me is equivalent to abundance. It's more than enough. It's plenty.
Yes.
And it's there. I don't have to go and get it or think about it. It just is. It's here. And I always think of blossoming flowers or fruits, right? The tree just gives those fruits. And so I've always felt that when I've thought of like metaphors or embodiment for overflow, it's that. It's I am who I am my becoming, and from there I gift the overflow.
Yes. And of course, in order to give, you have to be in contact with your gift. in order to give it, right? And isn't it also so beautiful how this is the natural feminine design? Like we as women, we're so magnetic when we're true to our authentic design. We just naturally overflow, right? Because we as women, we are nature and nature overflows.
Yeah. And even as you're speaking, I'm actually getting the vision of the ovary. And so
Yes,
the ovary is like a budding fruit that
yes,
it pops off
yes,
the follicle that is ready to be the egg for ovulation. And so
yes,
naturally in our cycle, we are women that overflow. And that's why obviously I know you do it too. We track our cycle because we know, oh, when I'm ovulating, I'm in overflow energy. I
yes,
want to be giving and sharing and speaking. It comes so naturally because that's literally what our bodies are doing. Our energy is in that moment designed to give. We are overflowing. Our eggs are ripe. They're ready.
yes. And also the ovaries are the light generators within the female feminine system, right? So a lot of our radiance, of our glow, of this like juiciness and beauty that we give to the world, it actually is sourced from the ovaries because they are on an energetic point, the light generators that then kind of like ripple all that juiciness out into the world. So it's a very beautiful example. Yeah, very
Yeah,
fitting.
beautiful. And so now let's get into queen. You know, everyone talks about queen, step into your queendom. Let's define it for ourselves what
Yes.
queen means.
To me, very clearly, a queen is a woman in her power that understands that she's here to serve. So, what makes a queen is her ability to serve her people, the women, right? Like the collective as a whole. Of course, it oftentimes comes with authority, responsibility, right? And the queen very much is kind of like an accumulation of like the mother, the lover, the huntress, the healer. It's kind of like once you walk through these archetypes, you kind of like automatically develop the queen archetype, right? I'm both you and I, we're not yet mothers, but I really think we kind of went several rounds along the spiral to actually come to this embodiment, right? And that would be like my definition is like how much is a woman in her power and how much is she serving unconditional love and truth, speaking her truth, right? All of that, how much is she serving her people?
Absolutely. And what I would also add to that, I agree with all of that. And I would also add there's this level of maturity
Mm-hmm.
that goes back to the energy we were talking about with the overflow is that you are so full of your truth that
Mm-hmm.
there is no validation, there's no need for even external advice. Like you
Yes.
know the mission, the message, what you're here to share with the world, what you're here to do, who you're here to be. And that authentic expression, I feel like the ripeness of the throat chakra really comes online as the queen
Yes.
because the truth is known, the truth is there. And there's even like a quietness and a gentleness to the power that
Yes.
comes from this maturity, right? It's not like peacocking, like, oh, look at me, like I have all this to share. It really comes from this quiet, deep, deep place
Yes.
as the queen.
Yes.
And no validation is needed from outside the self. And I find that women like us on a mission, when we're truly embody our queendom, our power, our results, what we're sharing is not bound by any results. Not
Mm-hmm.
even we know what we're meant to share, who
Yes.
and how we're meant to serve. And I feel it even goes a step further where for me, it's always been about like even the regeneration of the earth. It's not
Yes.
even just my clients, right? It's like the world, it's women, it's couples, it's men, it's beyond, right? And it's really for the highest good of all, for
Yes.
all. And
Yes.
for me, I know that when I'm thinking of my goals and my purpose, I'm so thinking also about like the whole world. I want to make an impact for the world. And when we think of just queens, right? Of course, they're involved in global matters, right? It's not just here, it's the 360 view.
Yes, 100%. Beautifully said, Nikki. And for me also, when you spoke about like the strength in the throat chakra as you manifest your world through your words, and there's this silent power that speaks louder than any words ever could, that oftentimes opens when you descended into the body, into the womb, into the deeper layers of your femininity, and you came back with pearls. Like I always give that example of like we as women, we're like deep ocean divers, deep sea divers. And even when we have our period, that is the time when we do the descent. When the womb forces us to descend down to the deepest layers of our femininity and then come back with the jewels, come back with pearls of wisdom. And I feel as a queen, you've done that many times. You basically went up and down your energy bodies a couple of times so that you actually open up through your system so that you then can speak truth in such a secure way.
Absolutely. And she's giving us a teaser, everyone, into the
Yes.
bonus is going. I'm so excited to experience it myself. It's called The Descent into Queendom or into the Queen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be an embodiment and somatic experience guided by Katharina. So I'm really excited to experience that. And, you're also, as I hear you speaking, I can't help but think of the true definition of ascension, which is really about incarnating even more into our bodies.
Yes.
And a true queen, and here we're even starting to talk about the master codes. When we are in our mastery, those of us here on our spiritual path, those of us who are here to live our ultimate potential, it's really about bringing the fullness of our soul, our oversoul, fully into and grounded into the vessel, the 3D body, to make matter divine. And we're raising the frequency of the physical matter of our bodies, which makes us more radiant, more luminous, which allows us to operate at a higher level. It brings all of our spiritual gifts online. And that's what a queen embodies as well. And so there's that level of mastery that comes from the oversoul really descending even more into the body. So you're fully living 100% present here and now.
Yes. And I would add to that, it's beautifully said, Nikki, and I would add to that especially as women, every woman wants to be magnetic, right? Every woman wants basically to come inside the room and be like, okay, look at me, all the heads turn, right? It's like, it's a deep desire because deep down we know that we have that magnetism. And that magnetism comes online the more you actually bring of your oversoul into the body. Because oftentimes through trauma, the body holds somatic contractions. And then we're here to like open them again and open deeper and deeper and deeper, right? It's like infinite layers that keep opening. And for me, it definitely started with healing my body, healing myself, right? So it's kind of, we spoke about that too, where it's like, wow, where did we came from and where are we now? And it's like quite the transformation. But in the end, it's always an opening process. And the problem oftentimes for women is we feel it's not safe to open, right? We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to be exposed. We don't want to hear the truth of what we want to correct. But this is the path. This is the dissension, right? This is the path of actually going where it's uncomfortable and bring love and opening to it.
Absolutely. And as we're speaking, another master code connected to Queendom is really coming online. And we're going to define what codes are in a moment. Mm-hmm. Truly, a queen has really beautiful and powerful boundaries. Yes. And that boundary is also what makes you magnetic. So yes. When we are enmeshed, entangled in other people's energy, dramatic situations, this lowers our radiance. It dims our light. It depletes our energy. So we're not as luminous, bright, and radiant. And so the moment we learn better boundaries, how to really honor our space and the others. And this is a big part of the healing journey, especially for people and women who are empaths,
Yes.
people pleasers, as well as if you experienced any form of trauma in this life and even in past lives. So we're even bringing some of that to heal in this life now. And
Yes.
so remembering our boundaries to really embody our queendom is so, so important.
Yes, yes, very true. And what I noticed through working with thousands of women, that a big part in that is the father, because the father is oftentimes the one that is giving us the containment. So when we grew up without a father or emotionally unavailable father, then we miss these borders, we miss this containment. And then it's more like, okay, I need to sacrifice my authenticity in order to have secure attachment with my caretakers. And that's oftentimes when we kind of like move the borders from like healthy to unhealthy ways, where we learn as children, okay, I need to please in order to survive, right?
Yeah.
And then we grow up and we do the exact same thing. And again, it takes a lot of vulnerability and courage to then arrive at this place where you have safely secure boundaries. Right. And as you said, that is deeply magnetic, because deep down, everyone, I believe, every woman just fully wants to be herself and just shine bright and radiate. But when you learn it's not safe to shine, then of course there will be boundary issues. Right. So we already start to like weave it all together.
Yeah. So now let's get into what is the definition of a code?
Mhm. For me specifically, it's like, and that is also something that you and I both share, right? Like even our programs, we use the word code again and again and again, right? Like queen codes, priestess codes, all of that. Yeah.
I have
Um,
Ascension and abundance codes,
yes.
Isis codes. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it's very easy to like really like 3D explanation. It's a software update. So the same way how like if you're a computer, you need software updates, and the codes that we deliver, whether that like, first of all, through our embodiment, because we can only deliver the codes when we actually embody it, only then it will click in the consciousness and something gets transmitted, right? Otherwise, anyone that would read 1,000 books could do this work, but they can't because it's not embodied, right? So the actual embodiment is what creates the energetic kind of like transmission of the code, of the software update. So to keep it very simple, it's to me, it's like a divine software update. And at least in my work, it is more about helping these women to remember what they know deep inside their hearts and wombs. And that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always define codes as a packet of information
Mm-hmm.
that can come through verbal transmission, embodiment, so energetic transmission, and also through different types of energy healing or energy codes. Like for me and my codes, I share light language transmission, which is a form of energy work that happens through sound, through song, through toning, through different melodic ways through air. So we're using the element of air a lot in that way, and we're moving the particles to oftentimes awaken dormant DNA. So
Yes.
information or codes right within our DNA live codes. So it's like the codes awaken your codes that are already within you. And
Yes.
I also feel that once a code is experienced, it can't be unexperienced. It's like taking a red pill, like in the Matrix.
Oh yeah, one-way street.
Exactly. And so you can't unexperience the code. It's like
Yes.
a healing transformational activation, is
Yes.
what I like to call them. And it's true what you say, they have to be embodied, because my experience with giving the codes has been it tells me when it's ready. It's like my
Yes.
guides, the benevolent living beings I work with are like, okay, now you deliver this one.
Yes.
Because oftentimes when I've created both the Ascension and the Abundance codes, a bunch came through. Sometimes more were added, and I didn't know the order they would be transmitted. And then it would be like, okay, so the next abundance code that's coming online for me is generosity.
Mhm.
And it's like with this reason, so depending on the timing of when you watch this, I just, I've had my Black Friday sale, and something with the generosity of what I offered, like activated another level of abundance where I was able to touch the energetic match of my $1 million months. And it was like, oh my God, so much pleasure. And so, like, I'm so excited to share that because had it not been for this whole experience, I had to live it to then feel the frequency and the shift in my energy to then be able to deliver it at a new level. So I'm really excited for that because it's also a gift doing this work because what we transmit, we receive.
Of
And
course.
there's like this powerful intelligence. Like right now, I'm also transmitting 44 days of compassion, working with different goddess frequencies. And it's been so incredible to then have to live real time moments with my beloved because he's doing it with me. And I'm just like, wow, just the intelligence of the containers. So it's one of those things, I'm sure you experienced this too, Katharina. It's like the
Oh, yeah.
offer because then you're going to have to really live it.
I experienced it so many times. Like, I've been doing this work for over a decade, and like my last program, Lover Codes, almost broke my relationship. God was like, "Oh, you want to teach and deliver lover codes? Here we go."
Absolutely. Yeah. Like even getting into that too. Like I know that my mission has always been I'm here for the healing and awakening of humankind
Yeah.
and the co-creation of the new earth and the healing of the man-woman relationship. So when I
Yes.
was always calling in divine union, my ego self was like, of course, he's just going to arrive and it's going to be perfect. It's going to be perfect. It's just going to be like divine union, voila. And then,
Comes
oh,
to descent.
the most shadow work I ever did in my whole life. And of
Yes.
course, it had to be his unique frequency to bring me down under, And it's like, wow, the wisdom. Wow. Like we love that we had to live some moments of horrible pain, but we're like, we can get through anything. Now we feel that like invincibility of our relationship, even almost ending it several times. And it's having to walk through those moments. And it's the gift. It seems like the curse in the moment, but it's such a gift on the other side.
Yes.
It's like on the other side of the dark night of the soul, it's like the rising of the phoenix, that lightness, that wisdom, that wow, like of course I had to experience that.
Yes. And it's cyclical if you think about it. It's like when you're in this moment and you're like, okay, this is the last time. Like, I'm never going to be here again. Next cycle, same thing. Which again just shows this is our nature. Like, there's nothing wrong with us, right? So I really want to just like, for all the women who are like laying on the floor and asking, why, am I in this again? It's like it's happening for you, right? It's for you. This is the cyclical nature of a woman, the descent and coming back with jewels and pearls. The rising of the phoenix is then again spring starting again on a higher frequency. Right. So it's always cyclical and it's beautiful. Like once you cook that pot several times, and that's what you got to do as a queen. It's like, okay, I guess I just walk through this. I guess I have to be brave. You're so rewarded. Like I truly believe like the brave will be so rewarded.
Absolutely. The only way through is through.
Yeah.
And
Feeling
that's also,
through. Yes.
and even what you're saying about cyclical, just a reminder to women, like even every month we go through it, every
Yes.
single month. And for me, I had such a strong PMS cycle, part of my cycle, that I then did DNA analysis to learn that I was producing more of a toxic form of estrogen that is connected to more of the mood disorders in the PMS time. And then learning like, wow, I can look at what I eat and
Oh,
help the conversion to the more positive form of estrogen. And then being able to shrink that week to be like 1 to 2 days before my bleed, where really feeling those strong energies and emotions. And so part of this journey into our queendom is that self mastery to really know ourselves and
yes.
to really be so curious, knowing that also, despite any DNA or genetics or whatever, we can overcome it and rise above. And
Oh,
that
100%.
actually brings me to what we're going to share about next is, once upon a time, though, we weren't always this embodiment,
Yes.
right? And so, Katharina, I'd love to hear, paint the picture. Let's say for women who might be thinking, oh, there's no way I am living such a challenging circumstance. Like, there's
Yeah.
no way I can rise into my queendom. Like, there's no way. Share with women the contrast, right? Because I will do the same, but I'm curious, what's the contrast? Like, once upon a time, who was Katharina before she is who she is today?
Mm-hmm. And we laughed about that in the beginning of our recording, where you said once upon a time, and I said there was a hyper vigilant, deeply traumatized little girl. That is my once upon a time. And I alluded a little bit to that already, where I said a big part in a woman's self-worth, self-confidence, how she shows up, how she engages in relationships, whether that's with men or with other women, a lot comes from the father, right? Of course, it begins with the mother. And there's like a real thing like called mother hunger, where what I feel on a collective level, many people are experiencing, where there's just not enough motherly love and attention. So we then resource it oftentimes to technology and the phone, to fill that void. But when it comes to true like self-confidence and nervous system, I grew up without a father, and that made it very, very difficult for me. Like I felt all my life, I felt very unsafe, which then, of course, then added to the hyper vigilance, right? And then again, I called it like, or I am like a hypersensitive empath. But why? Because I learned that I need to constantly scan the environment for threats because I'm not safe, right? So in that regard, it's like very much of the things that I thought, oh, this is just who I am, was actually a trauma response, was actually a way to survive as a child, right? And then, of course, I took on these insecurities into my adulthood. And because I never received that containment, that love, that presence, that validation, and even the provision from my father, I then projected that into the outside world, and right, and was like dancing on shows and in front of thousands of people to get that validation, right? To get this like, look at me, how good I am, what a good girl I am, right? And then also because there was no provision or no safety like financially, that's when I decided very early on to create my own business as a father replacement. My business then stepped into the role of providing me the safety, the monetary provision that I never received, right? So in that regard, I also run like business programs, and it's very interesting how, let's say a woman is like very much interested in like business stuff and just like success driven, chances are high there's some form of trauma with her father. Because if you had this pure love, presence, containment, provision, it's like, I know I'm good. I don't need to do anything to be loved by daddy. And the ones who did not receive it, they will be like, okay, let me prove to the world that I can change the world, right? So in that regard, it was wild for me to untangle over the years how much of my so-called striving to make it in the world was actually coming from a wounded little girl, right? And once I realized that, wow, and this is like an important code, I believe, whenever we try to get something from the outside world, whether that's validation, recognition, resources, attention, we're not actually giving because we want something back. We're truly giving when we don't want something back from the audience, from whoever we are giving to, right? And then I kind of reframed it in my brain, and that made like such a big difference for me, was to report to God, where I said, okay, I'm going to give, I'm going to really build up my nervous system so that I'm safely, securely attached, and I source from within and I report to God, and then God tells me if I did a good job or not. But I'm not going to sit there and ask, how was it? How was it? Right? whenever we bring that energy, this again is the little girl wanting validation versus the queen that knows I give because I have it already. And then I speak to God afterwards. And thank you, like whether you clap or not, I don't mind. So,
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And I also see why we connect so much because we have similar childhood traumas. And similarly, where my biological father was in and out of my life for the first decade of my life or so. And so, similarly, became the overachieving white collared worker, becoming the medical doctor. So similarly, I had the hypervigilance. And what I also had was the control mechanism. So I became the medical doctor. I controlled how well I did in school, you know, Phi Beta Kappa, summa cum laude, all the best things into the med school of my choice. And that overachieving, high achieving energy was absolutely a part of my reality. Then, of course, similar to you, I left Western medicine to create my own business as well. Though I didn't actually know I was going to do that, I went on my spiritual journey around the world. And even still, I can observe moments where I'm, and my beloved thankfully will catch me, where he's like, okay, like you don't have to control all the things. Let me finish. I'm doing it for you. So even allowing myself to be held is still a part of the journey because, of course, I can do it all myself as the queen. But remember, the queen is also in the receiver seat. She sits on her throne and she has a whole staff and a whole group of people, and even for ourselves, we have seen and unseen support, right? We have our guides, and then of course we have our earth angels, and that capacity to be able to receive. And part of my descent into my queendom was so much about doing less and receiving more, because the doing came from the nervous system that was in the hustle energy. And of course, growing up in New York City, that did not help. That's the culture. In New York, it's cool to be busy. It's cool to be in a rush and have a million things and your whole schedule is filled. Whereas stepping into my queendom, the flex is like, wow, I have all of this spaciousness and time. And how much of it can I devote to myself, my self-care, so that I can be in overflow and then giving from that place, which, like you said, it's like when a post, now we're kind of getting into the transition, right? And what it looks like for us to be in that overflow and the way we've mastered the codes. For me, there's moments where for at least half the month or most, I'd say a third of the month. So when I'm not bleeding or in that PMS phase, I could literally post like 2 to 3 times a day. And most of the time I'm posting like twice a day. And it's coming from like, I just hear the whispers in my ear. By like taking care of myself and just being connected and doing what I love with people I love, living in a place I love, really filling myself, it just pours forth, whether people read it or not. And so, really, my Instagram and a lot of my work, like I'm doing it because I'm going through it. And it's like, here it is if you want some too. But either way, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to go on this journey and you can come. You're invited. But it's not like I'm doing this. Yeah. Yeah.
that is so beautiful, love. And I can definitely say that for me personally, this massive shift in nervous system from, let's say, anxiously hypervigilant to now safely attached, secured, and like chilled as fuck, came when I just officially retired at the age of 34. Because then it kind of like everything I was working towards in myself, in my inner being, manifested in the 3D realm. And for me, just as a definition, what is retirement? For me, retirement is when your assets pay for your desired lifestyle. Like, okay, you can count in inflation and stuff, but basically, like, if you fall into a coma, you stop working, you can't trade your labor, right? And you just like, you still have your monthly expenses, and then whatever is overflowing after that, that is true wealth, right? That is your retirement. So when that catched up in the 3D realm, for me, that's when I noticed a massive release. It also really helped me let go of control, because I had control issues too, like massive, like big time. But whenever we micromanage and control, it's because we don't trust. Most of the time, we don't trust in God, we don't trust in the divine plan, and ultimately, we don't trust ourselves, because we had past data fed into our consciousness that we can't trust. We have to keep our guard up, right? So in a way, and of course, like, my partner helped me a lot with that too, but there was this inflection point. And I wouldn't say it was just even just like the money or whatever, right? But it did, like, I can't deny that it did have a big impact on how safe I felt in my body. And then, of course, with that, I was doing breath work every single week for 2 years to completely rewire my nervous system. I did like plant medicine. I did a lot of energy work. I still work with like energy healers. I have my own channelers. I have my human design reader. I have a whole team speaking about the queen and her, her, what is the name for it? The official name, but you know what I mean? Like her closest circle, and that's what you need. You need that, especially as a woman right now. It's like you have to build your support system, because society is not designed in a way where you just freely get it. It's like society now is not very supportive of women. It's like even raising kids, like it takes a village. And most of the time you have like mothers alone with their child, feeling alone, right? So, and it's the most important job because it creates the next generation. So I think it is extremely important as a queen, if you really want to like sit on your throne as a queen, that you understand, I need a team and I need to know myself. Like it instead of, oh, what's wrong with me, rather come from a place of, wow, I'm so curious. Why am I this way? Right. And even like when I did my first human design reading and found out I'm a manifestor, I'm like, holy, like a whole new universe opened up, and I understood why I'm this weird, So in a way, it's like we live in such incredible times because we have all these resources, even this podcast, even like listening to this. It's like, okay, now I understand, like pieces click together, right? So the times have never been better to step into your queendom, truly.
Absolutely. And I totally would agree with that. For me, my spiritual journey was the thing that my true devotion to it, knowing that it came above all else. It even came before my business. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, the spiritual journey was whatever it took to live my greatest embodiment, my highest potential. And because in this life and 80% of my lives, I've been a feminine female being on earth, it was really to embody my divine feminine here and now. And that looked like the embodiment of love and that refinement. And it continues to refine itself. And for me, the modality that has been the number one thing, which makes sense because I feel like it's my number one modality, is energy work.
Yeah.
All the many forms it comes in. Because for me, it acts through grace. And there is a surrender and trust that's required in the unseen and required to receive grace. And grace is, we don't know how it's done. It's like the miracle work. And that deep trust and faith, that's all feminine energetics.
It is.
And so I love, love, love energy work. For me, that's the thing I always have in my life, no matter what, different forms of it. But I feel like that's the greatest support in stepping into my feminine embodiment by far. And
So
definitely I've had a
beautiful.
team and I've loved working with all kinds of modalities as well.
Mhm.
And I'm really looking forward to experiencing your somatic embodiment experience to continue my descent into queendom.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's actually never complete.
Yes.
There's more layers. As long as we're incarnators, there's deeper and deeper layers that we can step into.
Yes.
So, Katharina, before we go into the bonus, is there anything else you want to share? And also let people know where they can find you.
Mm. Let me feel into that. For me, and when you were speaking about like the grace part, I really feel like this is also so present right now, because now that kind of like that security is there. I'm like, okay, so what? Like, what do we want to create when we're already in overflow, when you already have everything you ever wanted and more? And then it's again understanding that, yes, I'm an eternal servant of God. So even, like that work never ends, as you said. And I always bring the example of a Russian doll where there's infinite layers, right? Inside and outside, in a way. Like the more you kind of like open this Russian doll and release these layers of protection that are not your true self, and you really come to the core. And then once you're there, you quantum leap into a new Russian doll that is even inside there, So it really is like an infinite process, because I do believe that ultimately, like especially when we are souls that really went through a lot, I sometimes say like, okay, like everything else would be so boring to you as an as an ascended master in training. It's like, come on, let's put on that ancestor karma, let's put on that trauma. I can handle it. Because of course, if you couldn't handle it, God would never give you as much as you can handle, right? So in that regard, to actually just like everyone who's listening to this, you are an ascended master in training, you are a highly evolved soul, and to give yourself this credit, especially when you're struggling, it's like, wow, you are doing this, So that is really something like I just want to pour my heart into your audience. Like, yes, acknowledge that you are that. Yeah.
Absolutely. The universe will never give us anything we can't handle. And of course, we so divinely design this experience for ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
And especially in the moments where I have felt so challenged, I just remember like, wow, my mission is so big. Like the impact and the amount of people and the depth that I'm meant to touch people is so
Yes.
big because of what I've experienced, because I have to know what others are going through. And
Yes.
so that just reminds me of my depth and ripple of reach, So, and
100%.
I'm just sharing that for anyone else who's going through a challenging time right now. And your queendom may seem a bit far out, or you may seem like you've lost your way on your path, because that can happen too. But it's all serving your greatest becoming.
Always. But it's never a linear process and we can't control it. It's kind of like God will have his way if you want it or not, and you better surrender. It's kind of like that's what I kind of like what my experience has been, working with all these women. And you also asked how to find me and like what I'm focused on right now. And it's very much like I'm not like, since I've been doing this for over a decade, I of course have my own programs and I run my physical retreats. But right now, my mission is to build a global sisterhood, because I really do feel that women need to come together and synchronize wombs and really birth a new existence, because our womb is the most magical place in our body, honestly, right? It's connected to the cosmic womb of all creation. It's like we all are deep like creators at heart, right? And to come back into that power and do it in sisterhood, that's like my vision, women healing, supporting each other, nurturing each other. Because how can I say, the uncomfortable truth is like there will be a fertility crisis in the next years to come, right? Females are so siphoned. Many are, like in premenopause, where like the ovaries, the light generators just give up, and it's because of the siphoning, it's because of the exhaustion. And to just come back into, okay, what is actually normal and healthy for a woman? I feel this is really what like the collective feminine needs at this moment. Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And so all of Katharina's links will be included in the comment section if you'd like to connect with her some more. And we will see you inside the bonus content. Subscribe for access. We'll
Oh,
see you here next time on the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Bye for now.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the Ascension path with me and for doing this great work.